So, I want to talk about the Vince McMahon documentary, and what I want to tell you guys is that definitely I'm going to put it online, my review of it, and I really just think that there's something very important, like a hydrogen bomb, that I want to talk about when it comes to AEW. That definitely, I wish that Tony Khan would sit down and watch this documentary because there's a lot of things that you can take from Vince McMahon. Machiavelli wrote. What was it? He wrote The Prince, which is a book on how to get ahead in life. And then there's also Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War on his deathbed. But, there are times when you should look at, these things and you should come up with ideas and look at how things have been working and stuff like that, really. There's a lot of things for Tony Khan to learn from the Vince McMahon documentary. I think the first thing is that understanding what professional wrestling is about. It's about an emotional, consistent story being told. Like I think that what they're doing now in AEW is that they're resetting some things. So I think that what they're going to try to do is, for example, with the whole Moxley faction, that I think that what they're doing is good in certain ways, because what you're doing is that you're trying to really set up Moxley versus Darby Allin for the future. And you're also trying to set up, maybe there could be a comeback of Bryan Danielson going after Moxley and having a long title reign or something like that. That's good because you need consistency, but you also need to have a bit of, a journey of a character that people do care about. I do think that, I'm sorry, guys, but I also think that another thing that I want to say is, it is also, that's one big thing too, is that characters and emotions. Like I think one thing I was talking about is that a lot of people are sad that Luchasaurus is out with pneumonia, but if he survives, and I know that may seem a little offensive, but if he does survive and he comes back, and then he actually just continues to wrestle, and does a good job, he should come back to television. And imagine if he took the title shot away from Christian, and then you actually had Luchasaurus versus Moxley for the title, and you have him be this big monster wrestler. That would create a lot of emotions. Like a person that could have lost his life actually coming back and surviving, and then people talk about how he has a lot of potential. You look at someone like Dustin Rhodes, like I've said, that, a lot of people want to see him become a heavyweight champion before he retires. What would have him be the storyline of Chris Jericho being the ROH champion, being this entitled asshole, and then Dustin wins the title from him at All In 2025 in Texas in front of all the people. Imagine the emotional storytelling. They've done this a couple of times in the past. I think one good emotional story was obviously the return of CM Punk. A lot of people were in their emotions because of that. Another story is the Sting retirement. Obviously sending a guy out very strong when in WWE that didn't happen. And then another story is definitely the Acclaimed winning the tag team titles. Like that's what got me to go to all the wrestling shows, got me to 30 shows, because of, the emotional journey of seeing, as I said, two black men. One of them is openly gay, and also seeing Billy Gunn with them, who a lot of people will say was a very underrated wrestler. Like seeing those three people actually hold titles, because, a lot of times in wrestling, black people are not as pushed as other races. And then also, if you're gay in wrestling, you're always associated with stereotypes. So, like this underdog story. So, I really think that what AEW always has to be is about the underdog wanting to come to the next level, really. The emotional storytelling is very important. And, just hitting the heart a lot more. Like, I think with Wrestle Dream, like I've said, I give it a lot of credit for having a sad ending. It was good because it breaks this monotony of happy endings. So this is the first thing. I think the second thing with Vince McMahon is this is his strongest attribute, is that he fails and he cares about learning from failure. I think that the problem with Tony Khan is that he's very, very poor at learning from failure, and he's also very poor about progressing the company. This is why people don't like him. And the reason why people don't like him is that it fits the stereotype of the one percenter. And most people don't like the one percenter, which is a privileged, rich person that is a detriment. And he doesn't understand that, when you don't care about progressing AEW, when you don't care about fixing problems, when you don't care about looking at all these people who are reviewing professional wrestling and saying, you know what, you can write, you could write War and Peace or Atlas Shrugged, something that it's like 600 or over 1,000 pages on all the problems with AEW, and you don't see this guy actually making consistent improvements or making drastic improvements or making drastic choices, then people are looking at him as just this privileged punk bitch, really, where Vince was always about, if this thing fails, what's the next thing that I can do to make something great out of it. And I do have to kind of say, it's a little hypocritical because Tony's done some improvements. Like, I really like what I've been seeing. There's been a huge pattern of people talking on the microphone and people becoming bigger deals. So I give him some credit with that. But this issue is very disorganized stories. The next thing that I will say is something that I've seen improvements on is that he's making factions matter more. He went from Don Callis faction never holding a title. Now they're holding 2 titles. Brian Cage, and now you have Takeshita, and now you're having Takeshita, who has a good voice, and now you're having Kyle Fletcher, who has a hell of a voice, speaking on the microphone. So they have to keep going that direction. Make it like these people who screw over Ospreay and Ricochet, and then that could lead to a match at the Suncorp Arena where it's like Ospreay and Ricochet versus like Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher. I think that should be the match that they have. So there is some progressions. There is some learning from failure. Like they're not consistently having match after match. They're kind of doing a little bit more of people speaking. I think one big weakness of AEW has been esoteric wrestlers. Like I think when you had that show 2 weeks ago on Title Tuesday, their worst rating show, I think they had almost 400,000 people. One of the reasons why the show was so bad was because you had Emi Sakura versus Mercedes Moné. Who the F-bomb is Emi Sakura. Even though she's almost 50 years old, most people in an American audience would not know who she is. So it's a very bad choice. If you had something like, Jack Perry versus Rob Van Dam, or if you did something like you took a wrestler like Awesome Kong and gave her a match, then that would be good because people know at least who she is. Or you said something like, okay, well, it's Mickie James and TNA Wrestling. What would happen if you had Mercedes Moné versus Mickie James? Or what would happen if on Title Tuesday you had an open challenge? It was Jack Perry versus Joe Hendry or something like that, really. Like you really have to kind of stop with the esoteric wrestlers. Like most people don't know who Minoru Suzuki is and other things like that. And then also learning from failures, like what people have said. When you do something like I book for the sickos, those are just statements to say, I only care about diehard fans. And the problem is that the diehard fans are not always going to be there. You look at Ring of Honor. You went from 8,000 people going to your Ring of Honor shows to 3,000, now 2,000. When I was in Texas, what they did was the seats were $55, and the television tapings were okay, you pay $55, but then you get 2 free tickets, really. So you go to 3 shows for $55. That's less than $20 a show, really, because they don't care about learning from failures. Like Ring of Honor has been a failure under AEW. I think that, as I said, it needs to be developmental. It needs to feature wrestlers on the AEW roster who needs to work on their skills, or they may just have a sense of there's too much, there's too many of you, let's put you in something else. Really, they also need a sense with Ring of Honor is that they need to have a major storyline. Like I've said, what would happen if you did a Godfather storyline where you had all the rival factions to say we're coming together, really. So you have one faction run AEW, that's the Moxley faction. Then you have the Don Callis family run the ROH faction, and then you have a bunch of great matches, and all that stuff. So there's no consistent learning from failure that I do see in AEW. And if they go that direction, they're never ever going to be successful. So that's one big thing you learn from Vince is learning from failure. I think the next thing is moving the fuck on. And CM Punk and the whole thing is really that big of an issue. I think that one thing that a lot of people are proud of is that it was good that they fired CM Punk because he assaulted Jack Perry. That is assault. But Jack Perry should have been fired for instigating him. I agree that there's some logicals. I think that, sending everybody home after the Brawl incident, instead of being complacent, at least he has some proactiveness. But definitely when he made the choice to show the CM Punk footage, definitely when AEW became anti CM Punk, the glass spot at All In this year, also just showing the footage and all that. That's just is a lack of moving forward. Or even like with WrestleMania season, when Tony Khan was so focused on CM Punk, he was not focused on the fact that he had Supercard of Honor at the Leah Kurus Center during WrestleMania weekend. I believe they drew 3,000 people out of 16,000. And his focus should have been making that a show, really. His other focus should have been really looking at his show. Because what happened was he had Ring of Honor, Supercard of Honor, and then he also had Battle of the Belts, and he also had Dynasty. And the problem with all these shows is that you can't have three shows within a month. And really, when Sting retired, that got a lot of attention. That's like that's gonna be the best pay per view of the year, really, because of what that signified of what it does for wrestling history. But they didn't really ride that momentum. They went from the high of Sting retiring to focusing on showing the footage of the Young Bucks when they could have easily done something like Battle of the Belts. We're actually going to have it headline be on Samoa Joe versus Darby Allin. And then you get to Samoa Joe versus Swerve. You have Swerve be the new champion. You take it to another direction. And then also the other thing that I would have done was Supercard of Honor. I would have done so much on that show to make it a big deal. I would have said, okay, you would have had like Mark Briscoe versus Jericho, or you would have had whoever was the champion at the time. I think it was Mark Briscoe. Um, and then you have that, and then you also have you take a lot of other wrestlers on the roster and you say something like, okay, we're gonna give Miro a call. Do you want to be on Ring of Honor for a couple of months? Oh, Nyla Rose, do you want to be on Ring of Honor for a couple of months? I think they have Ronda Rousey now. Do you want to be on ROH? AR Fox and a couple other people, and really just say, okay, this is what Ring of Honor is going to be. It's going to be a show where these wrestlers who don't have enough time on television are going to have matches, and we're actually going to give them more space. We're going to take some developmental people, and we're actually going to give them some matches on Ring of Honor and see if they can go somewhere. You take some people who are wrestling in Philadelphia, and then you say, okay, you know what, you guys are doing good. We've seen some of your work. We're actually going to put you on the Ring of Honor show, and you guys are going to have some matches, or you're going to have maybe a tag team match, and it's going to be a jobber match, but or we're going to have a tag team match, but it's going to be like three on three, but you guys are going to go at least 20 minutes with people who are just starting out, really. What would happen if you had the Von Erichs versus three people from Philadelphia, from wrestling companies and all that, really? What would happen if you had a hardcore legend, like the FTW title? You take somebody like Roderick Strong, and you have Hook, and you have a Philadelphia street fight, or you have a hardcore wrestler, any hardcore wrestler on Ring of Honor, and you fought Hook, really. So what if they were so focused on that, really? I'm so focused on making Supercard of Honor a big show, Dynasty a big show, and then also title Battle of the Belts a big show. What if they were so focused on those things instead of just trying to get back at CM Punk, or having Adam Copeland come out and then just talk a allegorical promo like he's referencing CM Punk and what he said on the Ariel Helwani show, when a lot of people said that's a pathetic attempt to for AEW to kiss some ass, really. So I really just think that that there is a lot of just what I see with AEW is their lack of learning from failure. And I also will tie in a final lesson, really. And I'm two more. I think the other thing is just learning to get the fuck over it. CM Punk is gone. That's old shit. You look at some other things that have not really worked out for AEW. I think they have low ratings, but they have to kind of always be working hard, delivering the best show that they have. Really listen to the critics. And I also think that, like I said, I think with AEW, I agree with what Otera Central said. When you look at AEW, it's unfortunate that when Tony got the Meltzer driver, he made a smart ass comment about WWE saying that they're Harvey Weinstein of professional wrestling, really, because that really doesn't help his business. And then people say how hypocritical it was, So there's always a sense of you have to learn to get the fuck over it, and all that and all those other things. And I think the next thing they have to learn, the final thing, is it's okay to take risks and be experimental, but you always have to chase, the next big success, really, And there's a couple things with this, the exploding barbed wire death match was a failure, but I really think they need to bring that back in the future in the right setting. And I also think that the next thing that I would say, I think even at World's End, just exploding barbed wire death match should be every single year because of the big kaboom, really, like the fireworks of the New Year's, the big kaboom of the World's End, ending with an exploding barbed wire death match. The other part of it that I would say is that you look at something like the video game, that didn't work out, so they should make another video game with all the new wrestlers that they have, and say like something like, okay, we're going to look at a budget and we're going to say, okay, maybe like a $5 million video game. We're going to do something that's going to be more profitable. We're not going to do a $40 million one. You look at a lot of wrestlers on the roster. Like, I like them speaking on the microphone. I like them trying to do some different stuff, really, and you kind of need to keep encouraging that. Like, I think if you're going to like let people go, you let go of 10 people who don't care about improving or don't want to change their character. Like, and then you take 10 people who are improving or being different, and then you kind of like say, okay, we're going to give you like an extra like six months or another year. We're going to actually have you, just keep on going and whatever, really, So we need to kind of reward people who want to get out there and take some risks. So, there's just a lot for AEW to learn. Like, it's just really like, as I said, Vince is resilient. He's a very resilient motherfucker, and that's why he's so successful, and that's almost like why people respect him, because that's part of, because not a lot of people have resiliency. A lot of people get knocked down, they don't get back up. There's a lot of people who don't risk everything to go ahead in life, and that's what you got to do. That's part of being successful. And if AEW embraces those things, they'll be in a way better spot. But there's a lot that they can learn from the Vince McMahon documentary. It is a bit of an art of war of how to become successful, and AEW should really embrace it.